Hi guys, it's me, Charles Leclerc, and welcome to tonight's qualifying preview for this weekend's British Grand Prix at Silverstone. It was a glorious day today in Friday practice. Was quite windy though, especially in the second practice session, but still, glorious day. The fans seem to enjoy the Friday practice day at Silverstone. We are expecting a record attendance this weekend at the British Grand Prix, which of course is great to see for Formula One in general, but obviously the weather is not going to be totally like this for the rest of the weekend. There is definitely a decent chance of rain for qualifying tomorrow and possibly even for Sunday as well. But looking at what happened in practice today, this could be not necessarily when it comes to who's going to win the race and get pole position, but for the rest of the positions outside, say, the top 3-4 on the grid. This could be a really exciting and very surprising weekend, and I'll get onto why in just a moment. Just want to say quickly, hope you guys are doing well, no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're watching from. Hope you're all having the best time possible, and I hope you'll join me tonight in previewing, obviously, tomorrow's qualifying session at Silverstone. And what we'll be getting into in this preview is the usual stuff. We'll go through the results of practice 2, go through the sector time data of practice 2, just to look at in certain parts of the track where certain teams were doing well and where certain teams were really not doing well. Obviously, I'll get into my final prediction for qualifying, but also we'll be getting into car upgrades. There has been plenty of car upgrades for this weekend, and I want to go through the official list that was released by the FIA earlier today, so you guys can know who has improved their car and who has brought the most new parts out of any team. Yeah, we'll get onto that later on in the stream. Talking of the weather, as I did a couple minutes ago, today weather was fine. Was always going to be forecast, or it was always forecast, I think, for the last few days, that Friday would be a very hot and sunny day. Saturday though, the forecast has been constantly changing. The last forecast I looked at, which was a few minutes ago, looks like practice 3 tomorrow lunchtime is probably going to be a wet session. When qualifying starts, though, at 3 PM local time, it does look like it clears up and dries out. So, qualifying still, to me, if I was to predict, looking at not just the chance of rain, but also the weather radar itself, looks like it's going to be a dry session. And my predictions and thoughts when it comes to the teams through this stream will be based on if it is a dry qualifying session tomorrow, which, again, most likely looks as though it will be. So, yeah, I just want to let you guys know about that, because I know there's been plenty of talk about rain for Saturday. There definitely will be rain on Saturday, obviously tomorrow, but I'm not sure it will come for the most important part of the day, qualifying, which will be between 3 and 4 PM local time. But, we'll see if the forecast, maybe changes around. Maybe we'll get some rain for qualifying. We'll see. But as of now, looks as though it's just going to be a wet practice 3 and then a dry qualifying. Of course, so qualifying, it was dry after a wet practice 3. The conditions of the track will be similar then to practice 1. No rubber really down on the track, and will be quite a challenge for the drivers and the teams out there tomorrow afternoon. But anyway, let's get into practice 2, the most representative session of the weekend so far. And what a wacky session it was. Let's start with the top 10. Max Verstappen just about ending up quickest by a couple hundredths of a second from the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc, as I'll show you guys in a moment, did not do a lap time in practice 2 because Leclerc had an electrical issue with his car and was sidelined for the entire session. So Leclerc did no running in practice 2, but as long as Leclerc does prove this weekend to be quicker than Carlos Sainz, Ferrari, over a single lap, look absolutely right there with Red Bull. I'm not going to say they're quicker than Red Bull, because I still think Red Bull have to be for pole position, the slight favourites, but Ferrari are right there. There is no doubt about that. They're looking very good, Ferrari, with their car. And then third quickest in the Williams, I still can't believe it, Alexander Albon. Not only third quickest, but just ahead of the Red Bull of Perez and only 0.2 of a second slower than Max Verstappen. I honestly don't know how Williams was so quick today, because as you can see, after Sergio Perez in fourth, a few tenths of a second behind, about 4.5 tenths slower than Albon, is Logan Sargent in the second Williams. And Williams themselves, Alex Albon actually came out after practice and said that they, as a team, don't actually know why they're so quick. But they seem to be handling the track better so far this weekend. And look, really, really strong. So yeah, Williams, what a day they've had. Albon was also in the top 3 in practice 1 as well. So does look like consistently good pace from the Williams car. Aston Martin were 6th with Lance Stroll, then Hülkenberg 7th, Gasly 8th, Piastri 9th, and Fernando Alonso in P10. But yeah, that top 10, a very surprising one compared to what I thought it would be. And then outside of the top 10, many big names. You've got Zhou 11th, Russell 12th, Ocon 13th, Norris 14th, Hamilton 15th. Mercedes had a terrible day. Their car not only was slow, but on board, when they showed the onboards on the broadcast, their car looked really bad to drive, especially in the slow speed corners. Yeah, the car just doesn't look anywhere near as good handling wise as the Ferrari or Red Bull car. So Mercedes have a lot of work to do if they're going to be, you know, getting like a top even 6 qualifying position, to be honest. Valtteri Bottas 16th, Magnussen 17th, and then Tsunoda and De Vries 18th and 19th. AlphaTauri do have, without a doubt, the slowest car this weekend. Their car, as we know, very mediocre. And then, yeah, Charles Leclerc 20th, no lap time done. But if he had done a lap time, I think Leclerc would have had a good chance at probably ending the session quickest, given how quick Carlos Sainz was. And we know Leclerc is a specialist around Silverstone. So Ferrari, despite that little reliability gremlin, Ferrari on pace are looking very strong. And definitely on low fuel, as we'll get into in a moment with the sector time data, Red Bull and Ferrari are the 2 best teams. That is not up for debate. In terms of who comes after that, very much up for debate. But Red Bull and Ferrari, no doubt whatsoever, they are the 2 best teams here at Silverstone, at least over a single lap. So let's get into the sector time data. We'll start with the first sector. The first sector, you've got the flat out turn 1 and turn 2. Turn 3 and turn 4 are slow corners, and then you're flat out through turn 5 and onto the first DRS zone around Silverstone, and then that completes the first sector. It's an important sector, but it's definitely not the most important sector. But Red Bull, no surprise, the quickest team through there. But second quickest, the Williams of Alex Albon. So impressive for them to be that quick in a part of the track where, you know, it is high speed to a certain extent, but you do have also 2 very important slow corners. But despite that, they were very, very quick and just ahead of Ferrari. Haas F1 looking good in the first sector, and as you'll see in the final sector, the final sector times by team in a moment, Haas looking very good in the final sector as well, and Haas really looking very good in that what do you call it, slow speed corners. And really, the only slow speed corners at this track are located in the first and final sector. You do have Luffield, which is a slow speed corner at the very start of the middle sector, but other than that, it's all high speed. So yeah, Haas looking good. Aston Martin, not looking that bad actually. I know, you know, them nearly a tenth and a half of Red Bull in just sector 1 alone doesn't sound great. But when you consider that it's Lance Stroll who did the best first sector time, and most likely Alonso will be the quicker driver for Aston Martin tomorrow, Aston Martin's pace in the first sector is actually quite good. So, yeah, no problems with Aston Martin. They're looking good. Alpine looking decent. This is actually Alpine's best sector, I believe, out of any of the sectors. Sky F1 were really hyping up Alpine during practice 2 as being looking impressive so far this weekend. But from what I've seen, I don't think that at all. To me, Alpine don't look that quick, really, whatsoever. At least when it comes to the low fuel running, they don't look like they're anywhere near being one of the top 5 teams here at Silverstone. But yeah, Alpine looking decent through there. Mercedes, 7th best in Sector 1. Nearly a quarter of a second slower than Red Bull. Just simply not good enough. Really, Mercedes need to be a 10th of a second quicker in this sector. I know people may think maybe Mercedes are sandbagging and focusing more on their heavier fuel pace rather than what they're going to be doing on lower fuel on the soft compound tyre. I don't necessarily believe that's what Mercedes are doing. I just think, and again, when you look at the cars on board from practice, the car just doesn't look very grippy at all. It doesn't look anywhere near like the Red Bull or Ferrari cars, or really as comfortable as the McLaren. Saying that, the McLaren's slightly slower in the first sector, but in the middle sector and final sector, the McLaren way better than the Mercedes. And then the final 2 teams, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri. And Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri are without doubt, once again, like they were in Austria, the 2 slowest teams. But the sector here at Silverstone that really does show or give the best indication as to who is looking quick and who really isn't is the middle sector. Not just because it's the longest, but also because that's where the most important corners are at this circuit. And in the middle sector, Red Bull and Ferrari are pretty much level. So looking good for Ferrari. Red Bull, I mean, their car looked absolutely fine today. I know they were only barely ahead of Ferrari in practice too, but I still think, again, Red Bull, you'd have to say, because they have still superior downforce compared to Ferrari. Red Bull are still looking like the slight favourites for pole position. But again, in that middle sector, there is not really anything to separate the 2 top teams. And then once again, third quickest, well, he was second quickest in the first sector, but third quickest in the middle sector, Alex Albon in the Williams. And not only was he third quickest, but he was within a 10th of the Red Bull of Max Verstappen and 0.2 of a second quicker than the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, and pretty much 0.2 of a second quicker than the Aston Martin, and was actually, 0.4 of a second quicker than the Mercedes. So yeah, the Williams, just unbelievable in this middle sector. Again, not just quicker than those other teams, McLaren, Aston Martin, Mercedes, Alpine, but miles quicker. And that's why I do think they will be able to carry through not all of this qualifying or low fuel pace through to tomorrow, but I do think they will definitely be in the top 10 tomorrow with at least one of their cars, because I don't think tomorrow they're just going to suddenly drop off, the drop off the pace and be, a second slower than what we saw today. I really don't think that's going to be the case. So, yeah, Williams looking very impressive, and then McLaren looking a lot better. Piastri, though, the doing the best middle sector time, is important to remember with Oscar that not only is he, he's not the fastest McLaren driver right now, but also Piastri does have the new side pod and floor upgrade that Lando was running at the Red Bull Ring, but McLaren have also brought a new front wing, and that new front wing here at Silverstone is only on Lando's car, so Oscar is still not running every single update that McLaren have. So important to remember that when factoring in just where McLaren are, and McLaren definitely looking quite strong. And I still think they'll have a pretty good session tomorrow once they properly, get doing their proper running, because today was a bit of a trouble day for McLaren. Lando Norris had quite a bit of work going on to, I think, one of the wheels. I think it was his front left wheel. He had quite a bit of work going on in practice 2, so it wasn't the greatest practice 2 session really for Lando. His run plan was definitely affected quite a bit. Yeah, McLaren looking good. Aston Martin as well looking good, especially when you consider that, again, it is Lance Stroll who is doing the best Sector 2 time there, when normally it would be Alonso. And then, quite a drop-off, even from Aston Martin to Mercedes, of a tenth and a half. I have no idea why Mercedes are this slow. I will point out, though, that if they are running a bit more fuel than, say, McLaren and Aston Martin, it will show up most in the middle sector because of the nature of the corners. So maybe they were running just a tad bit more fuel than those teams. But even if they were, let's say they would be then on pace with McLaren and Aston Martin in this sector. That's still not good pace, because they're still, they still would be nowhere near Red Bull and Ferrari, and not really that close to Williams either. So I don't think Mercedes' performance today is genuinely where they are, but I don't think there's going to be an improvement tomorrow that sees them way, way better than what we've seen today. They'll definitely improve, but I don't think it's going to be a gigantic improvement on what we saw today. So yeah, Mercedes not looking good, period. Alpine, I have to say, not looking that great. Would have expected a tad more pace from them in the middle sector. Say a tenth and a half, maybe even 0.2 of a second quicker. And Alpine, yeah, just in general, not looking that quick this weekend. Alfa Romeo, a bit better. Haas, a bit surprising that they're not so quick in the middle sector, because the middle sector is the most high speed sector here at Silverstone. Of course, they do have a Ferrari power unit. Definitely need to improve in that middle sector if they can, by a tenth or so, because that really would help them possibly secure another Q3 appearance with Nico Hülkenberg. And once again, AlphaTauri, the slowest team. But looking at the middle sector, again, this sector really does show or give us the best indication as to who has the pace and what the pecking order is, really. Again, Red Bull, Ferrari, quite clearly the two best teams. And then after that, on low fuel pace, you would have to say Williams are the third quickest team on low fuel pace. When it comes to race pace, I'm sure it's going to be a massively different story. So don't expect Williams to carry through such amazing speed to the race. But again, on low fuel pace, I think Williams have got the third best car. And then probably followed up by Aston Martin and McLaren, who are pretty much tied, I think, on their speed here. And then after that, you've probably got Mercedes. I know Alpine were a tad quicker than Haas, but I do think actually Haas have a slightly faster car for qualifying than Alpine do, as I'll show in a moment, with Haas's really good final sector speed. And then the final two teams, definitely Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri overall for the circuit. But yeah, I genuinely think that Williams have the pace to be with Alex Albon, not just in Q3. I could see Albon in the top 7 on the grid for tomorrow in qualifying. I really could. And, well, you'll see what I've gone for in my prediction for qualifying. It is quite ambitious, but I am absolutely sticking with it. Let's go through the final sector times, though. The final sector, of course, you've got the hangar straight, and then a fast corner of I can't even remember what the corner's called exactly. I'm sure you guys will be able to remind me what the corner's called, but yeah, I can't remember exactly. I should remember, given that I remember most of the names of the corners at this circuit. But yeah, even though Ferrari quicker in this final sector, with obviously having then a final chicane pretty much, which is quite slow and pedestrian, leading then on to a very high-speed final corner where obviously you're flat out and then you cross the finish line. Ferrari and Red Bull still nothing really to separate the two teams through there. So yeah, Ferrari and Red Bull really dead level through the lap. Williams, though, once again, third quickest. Consistently one of the top 3 teams through every sector. And that's why I think on low fuel, Williams have the third best car here. Because it's not like they're only, quick today because they had an amazing sector 2 and the other 2 sectors weren't that great. They were, most importantly, consistently quick in every sector, which is what matters most. That's why I think Williams are going to be very quick tomorrow. And then Haas looking very good in the final sector. Like I said, in the slower speed corners, Haas definitely coping a lot better than other midfield teams. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on tomorrow. And then McLaren looking not amazing, but absolutely fine, I would say, in the final sector. And then Alpine looking fine. AlphaTauri looking a lot better, which is good to see. And then Alfa Romeo 8th. And then, dead level on the sector time there, Mercedes and Aston Martin, the 2 slowest teams in the final sector. Again, the wind was definitely affecting the drivers into that final 3 corners. But Mercedes' car especially, when I looked at it on board, was horrendous in that final chicane. Hamilton having lots of moments through there, losing the rear end under braking. Also, the front end not really working that well, which is really not good news because, of course, Mercedes have brought a new front wing here, which I'll show you guys soon. So, yeah, Mercedes really bad in the final sector, and that's really where they need to work on their car with the setup is for the final sector, because even if tomorrow they're a lot better in Sector 1, Sector 2, if they, keep up this level of performance in the final sector, then it doesn't matter how good they are in the first and middle sector because they'll end up with a pretty poor grid position. But, yeah, going back to middle sector times, like I said, for the pecking order going into qualifying, my belief, again, is it's Red Bull quickest, Ferrari just behind in second, and then third best team, again, purely for qualifying trim, I am going Williams, and then I've gone Aston Martin ahead of McLaren, but it's really close between those 2 teams, no doubt about it. And then Mercedes in 6th, Haas 7th, Alpine 8th, Alfa Romeo 9th, AlphaTauri 10th. That is, in the dry, what I think the pecking order is throughout the field. So, let's now get into my final predictions for qualifying tomorrow at Silverstone. Of course, I've gone for the predicted gaps as well. So, I think Max Verstappen will just about take pole position over Charles Leclerc. It will be really close, though, between Verstappen, Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, because Ferrari genuinely have a very good car for this circuit, at least on low fuel. So yeah, watch out for that tomorrow. Sergio Perez should definitely have the pace to secure at least a top 4 finish. And then yes, I am going Alexander Albon 5th on the grid. There definitely will be a drop-off tomorrow from Williams. They're not going to be only 0.2 of a second behind Red Bull. That would be amazing if they were, though. But even if there is a drop-off of 2-3 tenths or maybe slightly more than that, I still think Williams will be in the top 10 with Albon. And I, again, genuinely think Williams have got strong pace. So I'm going Albon 5th, just ahead of Lando Norris in 6th with Alonso 7th. The reason I'm going Norris ahead of Alonso is purely because Lando is a better qualifying driver. And yeah, I think probably for the race, let's say if this top 10 was to finish the way I'm predicting it to finish, I think Alonso does have then a very good chance of beating Norris in the race because Aston Martin do look like they've got a pretty decent race car, and obviously we know Alonso does really come alive on a race day. But yeah, I'm going to go Norris 6th, Alonso 7th. Lewis Hamilton will get into the top 10 because, one, he's Lewis Hamilton, and secondly, I do think that Mercedes will show a bit better performance tomorrow than what they showed today. But it won't be good enough to get both cars into Q3. And 8th on the grid, at best, for Mercedes. If they were to get that, that would be an absolutely horrendous qualifying session. But from what I've seen so far, accounting for them showing a bit more pace tomorrow, that's the best I can see. And then Lance Stroll, I'm going to go in P9. Stroll's actually looking pretty good so far this weekend. And then P10, Oscar Piastri in the second and less updated McLaren, because of course Lando now has the new front wing, but Oscar does not. And then, yeah, just outside of the top 10, I think you'll have Russell, obviously, in the Mercedes, Logan Sargent, Ocon, Gasly, Hulkenberg, people like that. Gonna be really from 5th on the grid all the way down to like 16th, even 17th. It's gonna be really exciting to see who qualifies where, because it really could be any sort of result we see tomorrow in qualifying in that part of the field. But yeah, let me know, guys, whether you agree or disagree. Again, based on what I've seen so far, accounting for certain teams definitely showing a bit more pace tomorrow. That's how I think it'll play out. Let me know in the live chat what you think will happen in qualifying. Before, though, I quickly move on to the upgrades for this weekend and show some of them on screen, some of the comparison pictures to show you how the newly designed parts look compared to the old parts. Let me just remind you guys of my next 2 pieces of content on the channel. So tomorrow I'll be live from 11:15 AM UK time for the Practice 3 F2 sprint race and qualifying watch along. And yeah, live from 11:15 AM until 4:30 PM. And then on Sunday, I'll be live from 1 PM UK time, 2 hours that is before the race starts, for the race preview and race watch along on Sunday. And remember, of course, on Monday, I'll be doing a review of the weekend and really the last 2 weekends. On Monday night at 8 PM UK time. So plenty of content still coming your way. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Because, of course, we cover every Grand Prix in 2023. And as well, for everyone watching, make sure to smash that like button. We're currently on 18 likes. Let's try and get up to 25 plus if we can in the next few minutes. Prank asking, why is Williams not a choice for the pole? The reason is because, even though I think Williams' pace is genuine, and I've gone for what I've gone for with my prediction of Albon, ending up in P5, there is a very good chance that I could be wrong and that Williams were actually just really quick on this particular day. So that's why I've not included them in the poll. And if you're wondering what the poll question is, what I've put is, after Friday practice, who is most likely to challenge Red Bull for pole position? And the options are Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, and I put Mercedes twice. Why have I done that? No idea why I've done that. So sorry about that. Yeah, I should have put McLaren. That was what team I was supposed to put there. So yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, out of those 3 teams, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, let me know who you think is most likely to challenge Red Bull. In my view, in qualifying, Ferrari definitely are going to be their closest contender. Mercedes and Aston Martin definitely on low fuel are nowhere near. They're nowhere near the Red Bull or Ferrari team. It's not even close. So, right. Now we're going to get on to car upgrades. Let me just find the tweet, though. First, where, what do you call it? I can find the FIA document getting into specifically the upgrades, and thankfully there are plenty of pictures online of the new upgrades as well, in terms of comparison pictures to show how the new parts differ from the old ones. So, right, hold on. Let me just get up the right tweet. And yeah, there you go. Right, so let me just get this up on screen for you guys. Nope, not that. So let's go through the team upgrades for Silverstone. So Red Bull, their upgrade is only circuit specific. Helmut Marko did say they were not bringing any permanent upgrades for this weekend. Yeah, no real upgrades for them. For Mercedes have a new front wing end plate and front wing. I did show a picture of it last night in my weekend preview, the comparison between the new one and the old one. I will show another one of that again. But yeah, only a new front wing for Mercedes this weekend. I've got to say, I am quite disappointed in the upgrades they have brought this weekend. I was expecting a bit more than just a new front wing. I mean, a new front wing is good. It's a big upgrade, but it's not as much as I was expecting, to be honest. McLaren, they have got a new front wing assembly, new nose assembly, a new rear corner. It says revised rear brake duct geometry and rear suspension as well, a modified rear toe link shroud. So yeah, further upgrades for McLaren there. And I'm pretty sure all of these upgrades, which go on top of the upgrades they brought last weekend, which was the side pod and floor, pretty sure all of these ones for Silverstone are purely on Lando Norris's car. So still expect Lando to be a bit quicker than Oscar, but great to see even more upgrades for McLaren. Aston Martin have got only 2 circuit-specific upgrades. There was a picture, though, on social media earlier of apparently Aston Martin bringing a new floor. Don't know if that's like a slightly revised floor or if it's like just a new floor that isn't actually a redesign. I have no idea. But yeah, no, from what we can tell officially, no permanent upgrades for the Aston Martin car. Despite that, though, they are looking pretty quick, which is good to see. A bit quicker, actually, than I expected them to be. For Williams, they only have 1 performance upgrade, which is a new front wing. It says there is a small change to the central trailing edge of the rearmost element. The area of the wing element is reduced and the trailing edge is reprofiled. On this diagram, you can just see where they're talking about. So just here next to where the nose cone is. So just a very small upgrade there. Alpine, they have a new front wing. There's actually a picture of that I'll show in just a moment. AlphaTauri, massive upgrade, but from what we've seen so far, it's not improved the car whatsoever. They've got a new floor body, floor fences, floor edge, so a completely new floor basically. Diffuser, coke/engine cover, that's basically the side pod. Rear suspension, rear wing, and beam wing, so a really big upgrade for AlphaTauri. But again, we've not seen anything to suggest that AlphaTauri have actually improved because of it. It says with the floor body compared to the previous floor body, underfloor surfaces local to the forward floor fences have been changed, and the leading edge of the floor is raised. The diffuser compared to the previous diffuser, vertical sidewalls have been modified. Coke/engine cover compared to the previous bodywork, its maximum width has been increased. Rear suspension compared to the previous rear brake drum, an extra winglet has been added behind the top wishbone, or rear top wishbone. And rear wing compared to the previous medium downforce rear wing assembly, the new geometry loads up the central section more and outboard section less. So, I mean, a lot of new parts, but they don't sound to be massively different in their design. The new upgrades there for AlphaTauri, but still a lot of new parts, but we've not seen anything really suggesting an improvement. Alfa Romeo, a few new upgrades, floor body, floor fences. It says redesigned floor keel winglets and floor geometries, redesigned floor fences, redesigned diffuser expansion, redesigned new rear brake duct, and redesigned rear suspension covers. So a few upgrades there for Alfa Romeo. But those are, guys, all of the upgrades for the teams this weekend. Now, let me just find the start of these comparison pictures where I can show you the upgrades. We'll start here with the new McLaren front wing. So on the top here is the new one, on the bottom is the old one, and you can see a very slight difference in the shape of this part of the front wing compared to the one on the bottom. Again, very slight difference. And then just here as well, the shape of the design, again, just ever so different by a slight amount. And then there's this as well, which I think is, yeah, this is part of the front wing as well. Again, on the top is the new part, and on the bottom is the old one. Again, only a slight difference, so it's not a massive upgrade, really, for McLaren. Let's find some other ones here. Aston Martin, I've got a revised front wing, apparently. You can see here on the top of the wing elements, it's just got a slightly different shape by the looks of it. On the top here is the Silverstone one, on the bottom is the old one. Again, though, looking at the FIA list, we didn't see a confirmed new upgrade, so this might actually be just a different version of the front wing that they already had, that they hadn't actually put onto the car yet. They did bring a new front wing to the Spanish Grand Prix, so maybe this is part of that. But yeah, slightly new front wing there for Aston Martin. Here's the new Mercedes front wing. So on the top here is the new one, and on the bottom here is the old one. So you can see here where the hands are pointing, quite a different shape to this area than on the old front wing here on the bottom. Yeah, quite a different shape in the way, as you can, if you look at my mouse, it goes up and then slightly down, back up. When on the one on the bottom, it just goes up and then just stays really in a much more straighter fashion towards the nose cone. So yeah, new front wing there for Mercedes, and this is also a comparison of the end plate and the new end plate they've got. On the top here is the new one, the bottom the old one, and yeah, just slight differences there. But again, considering this is their home track, it's, you know, closest to their home base, would have expected a bit more than this. Because this front wing, I mean, it's a big upgrade. It is, you know, it's you know, when we go back to this picture, you can clearly see there is, you know, a definite redesign of the front wing, but it's not as big as really what they need, and really as big as what I was expecting. So yeah, still disappointing to an extent from the Mercedes team. On that front, we've got, I think, new front wing for Alpine, yep, that I talked about a moment ago. So on the top here is the Silverstone one, on the bottom is the old one. So on the bottom here, you can see there's this cutout right here. If you just look at my mouse, it dips down and then comes back up. It almost looks like a shark bite took out of the front wing, when on the top here, the new front wing, it doesn't have that, and it's a lot more normal and a lot more like the other front wings that you see on the grid, and also a redesign to this area as well. So yeah, new front wing for Alpine, but again, we've not seen anything to suggest it's really improved their pace. And here as well, you can see just on this area of the front wing and this area, very slight differences. I think this area of the wing next to the nose cone is a bit beefier, or actually less beefy than it was before. So yeah, a new front wing there for Alpine. Lots of new front wings, of course, this weekend. Is there any more? No, I don't think there is. Actually, whilst I am here, this, guys, is the APX GP. This car is the car they're using to film that Formula One film with Brad Pitt. This is the car they're using, and they've modified it to, it's an F2 car basically, but they've modified it to look like a Formula One car. Obviously, you've got the AMG there on the car to make it look a bit more F1-like. But yeah, this is actually the car that they're using. They have their own garage at Silverstone. I have heard rumours that they're going to lead the formation lap, but I don't think that's true. And I really hope it's not, because that would be super cringe if that was to actually happen. But let's hope not. But yeah, those are all the upgrades, guys, of all the teams this weekend. Yeah, new front wing for what? Mercedes, McLaren, Alpine, it appears Aston Martin. A few upgrades for AlphaTauri and Alfa Romeo. I think was it a new front wing for Williams as well. Yeah, lots of new front wings. Clearly, Williams are coping well with what they're what's on the car now, but other teams not necessarily as much. But now we've gone through all of that, it is now time to get into the teams in a bit more detail and get into just how I think they'll end up with the results that I have predicted. So, we will start with the Red Bull Racing team. Let me just get them up. Hold on. There you go. And yeah, Red Bull not looking as quick in the low fuel running as I expected. Definitely nowhere near as quick as I expected, because in my not my qualifying preview, my weekend preview last night, I thought they would be half a second quicker than Ferrari around here, because I just thought their car would be way too good for anything else. I thought they would have a much bigger advantage in the corners than they've got over Ferrari, but looking at the sector times, it doesn't really look like Red Bull on low fuel have much of an advantage at all. And it really could come down to, in qualifying, the drivers rather than the cars, given how close they are to one another. So, yeah, I still think Red Bull will get pole position. And the reason I think that is because Charles Leclerc missing practice 2 is massive, because that's 1 hour that he's missed out on. Practice 3 most likely is going to be wet, and then if qualifying is then held in, held then in dry conditions, then he'll only have had experience of dry conditions here this weekend at Silverstone in practice 1 of just 1 hour, when obviously Verstappen and everybody else would have had a lot more experience, and I think that might just play a crucial role in who ends up on pole position. But yeah, Verstappen just about will get on pole. Charles Leclerc, I think, will be just behind in second. Sergio Perez, we'll just quickly go on to him. Perez looking a bit closer to Verstappen than I expected. I expected the gap between the two around this track to be really closer to half a second. It appears so far it's more like, say, 2.5 to 3 tenths of a second, which is definitely better looking for the Mexican driver. I really struggle to see Perez having yet another qualifying session where he misses out on the top 10, because the Red Bull car is just that good compared to every other team except for Ferrari. Perez would have to put in such an unbelievably bad performance to not make at least the top 10. So yeah, I think it will be Verstappen on pole, Sergio Perez in P4, and if Ferrari are indeed their closest competitors, then Red Bull should then go on to comfortably win the race on Sunday, because looking at the long run data, Red Bull do still look like comfortably the quickest team in that area. So yeah, Red Bull looking great. But yeah, qualifying, like I said, it's that close between Red Bull and the next team, the Ferrari team. It really could come down to the drivers, which of course is what we ideally want to see, it being so close on lap time that it comes down to driver performance. That's why a couple of years ago in 2021, that's what made that season so exciting, is because it was so close between the two teams. It came down to what the drivers did, and we really could get that in qualifying tomorrow. Whether it's dry or wet, of course, in the wet, the drivers will have even more of an influence than they have in the dry. So yeah, Charles Leclerc, despite not not getting out in practice too with that electrical issue, which should be okay. They should be able to get the car all ready for tomorrow. I did see confirmation that Ferrari do not think that they will have to take a penalty. They think they'll be absolutely fine when it comes to that. So yeah, Ferrari, you don't need to worry about necessarily reliability-wise for now. But yeah, I think, if it does come down to the two drivers, Verstappen and Leclerc, in terms of who gets pole, and doesn't really come down to the relative car performance, we do have to remember that Charles Leclerc is one of the best drivers in the world at this circuit. I can't really think of many more drivers that are better than him around this track. Lewis Hamilton, of course, you'd have to say is better than him around this track, because Hamilton has won here 8 times previously. We'll just go back onto him. There you go. Yeah, Hamilton, of course, has won here so many times. But except for Lewis Hamilton, you could argue Leclerc is better around this track than Verstappen and, your Alonso's, Norris's, and all the other drivers on the grid. He's had so many great performances here at Silverstone. He's finished on the podium here twice in 2019, actually 3 times, 2019, 2020, and 2021. Should have won, really, the last 2 British Grand Prix. 2021, he put in clearly the best performance in that race and was heading for victory until I think his car let him down. Then, of course, last year, deserved to win. He had the best pace, but then Ferrari screwed him over. So if it does come down to, Charles Leclerc and what he can do, I have no doubt he will be right there in the fight for pole position. Again, though, the reason I'm going for Verstappen on pole is because even though Leclerc is so good around this track, I think because of the form that Max is in currently, forgetting, who is good around this track and who isn't, I just think with Max's form at the minute, you can't really bet against him. So that's why I'm just about giving it to him ahead of Leclerc. But I would not be surprised whatsoever if Charles Leclerc took pole position. Despite, I have to say, Leclerc's amazing performances around this track. He's actually never taken pole position at Silverstone. The closest he got, I think, was what was it, 3rd last year, and also 3rd in 2019. So despite his great performance, he's not been able to secure pole position. Maybe he'll be able to do it tomorrow. For Carlos Sainz, of course, he got pole here last year and won the race, even though he wasn't the absolute quickest driver in the race itself. Yeah, Carlos's pace looks really good as well. Only a couple hundred slower than Verstappen. I still think he'll be slower than Leclerc because of how good Leclerc is at this track. But Carlos definitely will be close-ish to the pole position. My prediction is he'll end up probably a 10th away, ultimately, from pole. But if Verstappen or Leclerc don't produce the greatest Q3 that they can, and Carlos can make sure he produces the best he can, we could see Sainz on the front row, if not grabbing a second pole position in a row here at Silverstone. It definitely is a possibility. So yeah, watch out for Ferrari tomorrow. Car looks quick. Also, I just want to quickly mention this. I did mention yesterday in my weekend preview that Ferrari said they were going to be bringing new upgrades this weekend. Now, officially, Ferrari have not brought a new upgrade, but Ferrari do have new parts on their car this weekend, if that makes any sense. And what that means is Ferrari have brought new parts at the last 2 or 3 races before this weekend, but just haven't used them up until this point. And I think one of those upgrades is a new beam wing, which I think, I'm trying to remember where they brought that. It was either Spain or Austria where Ferrari brought that upgrade. And yeah, it is now on the car this weekend, is the point I'm trying to make. So they do have new parts on the car. It just isn't officially a new upgrade, because it has been seen and brought to a circuit before, just wasn't used by the Ferrari team. So just want to clarify that in case you guys are confused with, Fred Vasseur after Austria saying that they were bringing something new for Silverstone. That's what they meant, that they were going to be putting a new part on the car rather than an upgrade that we have not seen before. But yeah, Ferrari looking great and looking like they can secure, just like in Austria, another really strong grid position for Sunday's race. Now let's get on to the teams that are, well, quite a bit further behind the Red Bull and Ferrari teams. And we'll start with the Silver Arrows Mercedes. Yeah, I don't think Mercedes tomorrow will be as bad as what we saw today. That's one thing I do need to start with. 12th and 15th, that would be probably the most depressing qualifying session for the home crowd ever if that was to happen tomorrow. Because, of course, both drivers are British, one of them being the greatest British driver of all time in Lewis Hamilton. I would be massively surprised if they were to have both cars knocked out in Q2, or possibly even worse. But I do think, even though there will be an improvement to a certain degree tomorrow, because I don't think they are quite showing as much of their pace so far this weekend as other teams are, I still don't think their pace is good. From what I've seen of them on board, the car in the slow corners looks horrible. The car, to me, looks like it's locking under braking going into the slow corners, which I think Lewis Hamilton complained about in Austria, if I remember correctly. And also, there is a bit of understeer from the Mercedes as well. That new front wing not necessarily helping that at the minute. Of course, they do need time to fully understand the upgrades and how they affect the car. But yeah, the car in the slower corners looks really bad to drive. And in high-speed corners, it looks better, but compared to Ferrari and Red Bull, not on the same level. Absolutely not the same level. So yeah, Mercedes are nowhere near where they need to be this weekend, at least on low fuel. For their long-run pace, from what I've heard, their long-run pace actually looks a lot better, if not pretty good. But, of course, if they end up with a really bad grid position, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where they, or how good their pace is if they end up so low down on the grid. I'll just try to see if I can find the data. Someone posted it earlier on F1 Twitter, but I can't find it now, unfortunately. I just saw as well, there was a picture tweeted out by someone of Ferrari receiving a new delivery of some new parts for their car. Apparently, the rumor is it's a new floor. I will hold off on confirming that until I actually know with Ferrari. But anyway, with Mercedes, yeah, their car in the slow speed corners looked terrible. That's why in the final sector, they looked like they had no downforce at all, really, compared to Red Bull and Ferrari. And in the high speed corners, yeah, it looks better, but just not really anywhere near good enough for what they really want. So, yeah, Mercedes are in trouble. There is no doubt about that. The best I can see really for Mercedes tomorrow is if Lewis Hamilton can somehow produce, one of his best laps that he could possibly produce with his talent, maybe they can get onto the third row. Maybe. But that's how bad it is for them with their car right now. Most likely, the best I can see with Hamilton producing a great lap is the fourth row, and that's why I've gone Lewis Hamilton, 8th on the grid, because as far as I'm concerned, on low fuel, they're not as quick as Williams, and they're definitely not as quick as McLaren or Aston Martin. They are, at best, from what I have seen so far, accounting for, them sandbagging a bit more today than maybe other teams are. I think Mercedes on low fuel are the 6th best team. So yeah, despite that, I still think Lewis Hamilton will end up in the top 10. I'd be very surprised if Hamilton was to end up getting knocked out in Q2 at Silverstone, that would be such a surprise for that to happen. George Russell, though, we move on to him quickly. Even though it's his home race, obviously he's not in good form. He just came off the Austrian Grand Prix where he was quite terrible all weekend. Didn't make Q3, only finished on track in 8th place, and his pace was pretty poor throughout the entire race. And from what I've seen so far this weekend in Friday practice, his pace, once again, not very good. I know he was quicker than Hamilton, but I think if Hamilton had done a clean lap, I think he probably would have ended up ahead of Russell in practice too. So yeah, Mercedes looking not good at all. And because Mercedes are not looking good, I do think George Russell will miss out on the top 10. On Saturday, of course, tomorrow, Lewis Hamilton, I'm going to go in P8. The only thing really that could see them improve is if indeed they were running today a lot more fuel than other people were, which is of course possible. There's, there is a team I am going to be wrong about with their performance. It's not going to end up exactly how I predicted, but if they weren't actually running that much more fuel than other people, then yeah, their performance is scarily bad compared to really what we expected it to be. We expected it to be a lot better than what we saw in Austria and Canada. But they seem, I don't know, despite that new side pod and floor and suspension and all of that, they just seem to be going backwards again. It just doesn't... I know fundamentally this car is not, it's a different, the chassis, the way it was built, was not built in mind of, them switching to a different side pod concept. So that definitely, hampers their performance quite a bit. And that's why, really, you're not going to see massive gains from Mercedes until 2024. But I didn't expect them to start going backwards again. That really... is a surprise to me. So, yeah, I hope I see much better pace tomorrow, and I hope I'm proved wrong. I really do, because it would be great to see Mercedes a lot more competitive. But at the minute, I think, really, yeah, getting both cars into Q3 would be a pretty good effort for them, given how competitive teams like McLaren, Aston Martin, and even Williams are compared to them at the minute. Dark days at Mercedes. And, right, what we'll do is we'll go on to Aston Martin. And then after Aston Martin, I'll come to you guys in the chat so I can see you guys typing away, posting all your comments. And I want to make sure to read what you guys have to say. So make sure to keep posting those comments because I'll get to them in a second. Aston Martin look very good. Lance Stroll was in 6th place in practice 2. Fernando Alonso, I think the only reason really Alonso was not quicker than Stroll in practice was because Alonso had a bit of a scruffy first sector, I think, and definitely in the final sector was very scruffy and really was struggling in that final chicane. But I don't think that's necessarily going to carry through until tomorrow. Because even though the Aston Martin car in that final sector did not look great, on board, it looked a lot better than what we saw from the Mercedes team. So I do think Aston Martin have a good car this weekend. Should get, if it plays out the way I think it will, they should get both cars into the top 10, which would be, to start with, a very good result for them. And yeah, I still expect Fernando Alonso to be the highest placed Aston Martin driver this weekend. So yeah, my prediction is Alonso 7th, Stroll in 9th. Given that Red Bull and Ferrari are way quicker on low fuel, 7th and 9th, to be honest, is not that bad. I mean, I predicted them to be a bit worse than that yesterday. I thought they'd be like 9th and 12th or something in qualifying. So yeah, good to see. Looking a bit better than I expected. yeah, we've seen possibly a new floor for Aston Martin that might be fitted to the car maybe tomorrow. Again, I'll have to wait for confirmation on that. Really hope that is the case, that there is a new floor, because then might even see, a couple tenths better performance from the Aston Martin team. But yeah, car's looking good. Both drivers seem satisfied, I would say, with the Aston Martin car. So yeah, I think after today, they've definitely got a good base to build on for the rest of the weekend. We know, of course, in practice, they tend to focus, when setting the car up, they tend to focus more so on the race, because obviously that's where the points are scored, and they know, of course, they always have good race pace, so they try to prioritize that over qualifying. So despite that, having the pace they've got, yeah, it's a good start to the weekend. And from what I've seen of their long run pace, they look like they definitely could score a good amount of points this weekend, and quite possibly overtake Mercedes in the championship. Remember, of course, Aston Martin only 3 points behind the Mercedes team for second. So definitely, with the way things look so far, it does look like Aston Martin could be overtaking them in the fight for second. Actually, this picture you can see on the screen right now of the Aston Martin of Stroll is a really good picture to show the floor design of the Aston Martin, the water slide. If you look at it from where the Sentinel 1 sponsorship is, the way it drops down and then comes back up again, yeah, it is very much like a water slide. McLaren now have a very similar side pod as well. It's a really nice looking piece of the car, I have to say. And it does look nice compared to some of the other aerodynamic pieces and other flaws on the grid in 2023. But anyway, before we go through the rest of the teams, back to these pictures. And yeah, we'll come to your comments now in the chat. Let's see what you guys have to say. Right, so... good to see we've got now up to 34 likes. If you still haven't hit the like button, make sure to do so. Of course, does help the channel get noticed. Helps in the algorithm a lot. Yeah, make sure to smash that like button if you haven't already. Let's try and get up to like 40, 45 likes if we can by the end of the stream. But, right. Let's look through these comments. Greg Martinez says, good day, chaps. So the Willie's real. Of course, that's Williams' nickname, the Willies. Gixaman says, how great to see Williams' name near the top. Not only, yeah, is it great to see that name back towards really where they deserve to be as a, as a historical figure within Formula One, but, and I'll just make sure I'm right on this weekend, I'm pretty sure, is their 800th Grand Prix, and that's why they've got the livery that they've got. Just trying to look, is it there? Yeah, it is 800th Grand Prix this weekend for Williams, and that's why they've got a special livery. Let me just find it quickly on this slideshow to show you, because the livery actually looks quite nice. Yeah, let me just find it quickly if I can. Yeah, the way they've integrated, there's a better picture of it actually when I go on to Williams later in this stream. But the way they've integrated the British flag with the colours of the car, it looks so nice. It is such a beautiful car, especially in the sunshine. And I really hope they keep up this performance tomorrow, really for the rest of the weekend, because having Williams up there with McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Ferrari to a certain extent, how great would that be? It really would be something amazing. Yeah, let's hope they keep it up. Joe Cena says, I'm going to be honest, I'm a Mercedes fan. They're absolutely doing trash, but I think they'll have the right space for qualifying and the race, but they are not bothered about practice. The thing is, with Mercedes definitely do sandbag a bit more than other teams in practice that I've noticed. But they don't massively sandbag from what I've seen. There's been practice sessions before this season where they've not looked very good at all and then improved, but it's not like a massive improvement. It'll be like, them maybe 3-4 positions higher. And of course, from where they finished in practice too, even 3-4 positions higher would not really be good enough for them. So, yeah, I do think their pace is genuinely bad. Once, obviously, they show what their proper pace is. Do you think Lewis Hamilton will leave Mercedes? I mean, my prediction that I've stuck with since last year is that he will leave and retire at the end of this season. I know he keeps saying that he's going to continue for a few more years, but until he signs that contract, I am not believing a word he says. Not because he's a liar or anything, but I pay attention to the actions of a person rather than what they say, because the actions show someone's true intent. And given Mercedes' performance at the minute, Lewis might be having, and it would be absolutely justified if he was having this, second thoughts as to racing for Mercedes for next year. And maybe, maybe he might consider taking a year or so out if this is where Mercedes, are going to be really for the rest of the season. Because, of course, next year, once they build a completely new car with a much better concept, theoretically they should be a lot quicker, but it's not a guarantee. They could still be terribly slow next season. It's definitely possible. I mean, Aston Martin are still very good. Ferrari have improved. McLaren look a lot better. Alpine have still got a decent car. I mean, just look at the gains Williams have made, even this season. And, this performance from Williams, obviously, we'll see if this continues for the rest of the weekend. If it does, you'd have to think Williams could probably carry this through. Not exactly, but this improvement through yet a bit for the rest of the season. So, yeah, there's no guarantees about next season. So, yeah, until he actually signs, I'm not going to believe that he is going to stay. Because I actually want to see it announced. I thought it would have been announced by now, because normally, I'm trying to think the latest. When was the latest in a season that Hamilton signed a contract? I think it might have been when F1 returned from the summer break once. I think that might have been like 2017 or 2018. I think he signed a new contract. If we complete the European season and he still hasn't signed a new contract, then I think there is a genuine possibility that he is having second thoughts. Because why would you leave it so long? I know there's things to sort out in terms of the terms of the contract, money, and all of that stuff, but when you think about it, you can't imagine that the money and the terms of the contract are really going to be any different from what they are now. Maybe just a longer contract in general. So, yeah, it shouldn't be taking this long, to be honest. If he's that keen to stay, it really should not be taking this long for an official announcement, as far as I'm concerned. Greg Martinez saying, I think Lewis wants to leave. He doesn't look happy. I mean, who would look happy after, 15th in practice 2 in a Mercedes? But yeah, I think it's definitely possible that doubts might start to creep in for him. Joe Cena says, I totally agree with that, but I think Mercedes need to get a car when I used to have the window sort of races, but I think Max will struggle on hot tyres. Not quite sure what you mean by that, to be honest. Gixaman says, if Lewis and Verstappen swapped cars, Lewis would be dominating like Verstappen is. Yeah, that is true, but I mean, you could say that for a lot of other drivers. You could say that probably for Leclerc and Verstappen if they swapped, Alonso and Verstappen if they swapped, Norris and Verstappen if they swapped. So, it's not just not exclusive to Lewis. And I will say with Verstappen, he is obviously driving very well at the minute. Don't get me wrong. But he hasn't had any competition this season for the race wins he's took. And really this season he's not had any competition. So it is hard looking at this season to really rank him all time a lot higher than I already have him. Because this season he's going to win the championship mostly for reasons that have nothing to do with him, which is a car that is stupidly quick and just way too quick for anyone else to even think about fighting with. So, yeah, Verstappen, like I said, don't get me wrong, driving at a very high level, but again, all time, I don't think this is a season you're going to really mention as an argument for why he is, all time in the top whatever drivers of in F1 history. Let's find some of the comments here if I can. Sparky Pete says, I think you nailed it. I think Mercedes on race pace will make the top 5, but that's best case scenario for Lewis. Let's find some other comments here if I can. Sparky Pete says, Lewis P5 and quali. Michael Gott, will and can Mercedes change the troublesome front wing? I mean, we don't know if the front wing is why they were struggling today. It didn't seem like it was just a poor front end through the slower corners. It was also the rear of the car was just not very stable under braking. And really, even on the exit of the slow corners, it didn't look very stable to me. So I don't think it's just the front wing. I think it might be a bit more of a fundamental issue with their car rather than, the upgrade they brought this weekend. Sparky Pete says, Lewis called the car trash pretty much. He sugarcoats at times, but overall lets you know in a nice way. Yeah, I think that's true. Josiah said that there was 2021 where he didn't sign the contract until before pre-season testing. I think, though, with that season, if that's true, I think he already had a contract. I think that was just an extension. I don't think that was just I don't think his contract was actually running out for that 2021 season, if you know what I mean. I think he already had a contract going, until the end of 2021. I can't remember exactly, to be honest, when he signed his last contract. To be honest, yeah, I know, again, 2017 or 18, I think it was 2017 he signed in August. 2018, I think he signed a new contract at, might have been August as well. I think there was 2019 he signed it at Hockenheim, I remember. I think it was Hockenheim that weekend where he was quite ill and then had a disastrous race. And really Mercedes did. But, yeah, normally July, August time is when he signs his contracts. So, yeah, if it gets to, if we get to the middle of September where we get to the Singapore and then the Japanese Grand Prix, if he still hasn't signed then really, I think there is a good chance that he, that he won't sign. Sparky Pete says, I don't see Lewis sitting out 1 year. If he was to do that, he would retire, unfortunately. I mean, maybe. Yeah. Hard really to say. But we'll see. I mean, the only thing that's going to prove me wrong or different on what Lewis Hamilton's future is if he signs a new contract. Because again, he's done all the talking about, oh, I'm going to sign and I want to do it another, few more years and all of that. But until he actually signs, those words mean nothing. So we'll see what he does. Anyway, I think what we'll do is we'll crack on with the rest of the teams, and then we'll get to the end of the stream. We'll get onto the poll as well. The results of that poll towards the end of stream. Anyway, let's now go on to the rest of the teams. And we'll start with Alpine. New front wing for Alpine. Again, Sky F1 for some reason were hyping them up. I have no idea why, because I didn't see any real strong performance from them in practice 2. They were, 8th with Pierre Gasly, and Esteban Ocon ended up in P13. That's pretty much the type of performance they had in Austria. So, yeah, I don't really understand why they were hyping them up a lot more than other teams. But, I mean, they look like they might be top 10 runners if one of the drivers produces a really good lap in qualifying. But realistically, in the dry, I don't see them in the top 10 because I don't think they have a car on low fuel as quick as Red Bull, Ferrari, Williams, Aston Martin, McLaren, and probably Mercedes, you'd have to say, are probably going to be just about quicker than them. It will be very close, though. They may even be on the same type of pace, but obviously Hamilton and Russell are much better drivers, so they'll get a lot more out of their cars. And I think Alpine, to be honest, their main fight has got to be with Nico Hülkenberg and the Haas. That's who they really look to be fighting in lower fuel running. That's what they were fighting in practice too. So yeah, I'm really not buying the hype with Alpine. This new front wing for them, even if it does improve their pace, it's only going to be probably by a 10th of a second, maybe slightly more than that, which in relative terms is not really that big. And Alpine are still, fundamentally, at the minute, they're not as quick as Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, McLaren. They're definitely not as quick as those teams. And this weekend, they don't really look as quick as Williams, or maybe even Haas. So yeah, Alpine not looking that great, and I'm expecting, at best, a double Q2 elimination. Probably Gasly ahead of Ocon. Gasly has looked pretty decent so far. But yeah, I would not be expecting Alpine to make the top 10. Maybe if it's a wet qualifying session, they will. But in the dry, I just don't see it. I don't think they've got a good enough car. As we saw on the sector time data, they consistently did not have a car to even be in the top 5 teams in any of the sectors. So yeah, Alpine really just don't look that competitive. A team that looks, though, a lot more competitive, of course, is McLaren. Oscar Piastri ended up in P9 behind Pierre Gasly, but I do think McLaren still have a faster car this weekend. I don't think as well Piastri necessarily did the absolute best lap he could have done in practice 2. But yeah, I think McLaren have definitely got a faster car than Alpine, and I do think them and Aston Martin pretty much on the same pace. Again, remember, they've brought McLaren a few more upgrades this weekend. New front wing, as I showed you guys, and that is on Lando Norris's car. Piastri, thankfully, does have the new side pod and floor, so Piastri's performance will be a bit better than what we saw in Austria, but still, Lando will be the main man for McLaren. So yeah, I think you can expect Lando definitely in the top 6, 7 on the grid, given what he's normally like in qualifying, in what is a still pretty good McLaren car. Yeah, if you're a McLaren fan, you should be pretty confident going into tomorrow. Don't be too confident. You're not going to be top 3 on the grid, but 5th, 6th on the grid, I think really is possible for McLaren. Again, depends really on the drop-off Williams suffer, if any, and how Aston Martin obviously look compared to McLaren. And if Mercedes do show a bit more improvement, will it be enough to put them on level terms with McLaren? Again, we'll have to see. in qualifying tomorrow. But McLaren look like they'll be definitely, getting a top 6, 7 on the grid with Lando Norris. Piastri, like I showed you guys earlier with my prediction, I think Piastri will end up in P10. Because again, he doesn't have the fully upgraded parts, but I think he has a quick enough car still to make the top 10. And yeah, McLaren, in general, looking very good. Maybe not as quick compared to, say, Red Bull and Ferrari as I expected, but still good. So yeah, no need to panic if you're a McLaren fan and you were, maybe disappointed with what happened today. I definitely think McLaren have got a good car this weekend. Let's go on to the teams now who have much worse cars. Alfa Romeo, some new upgrades for them, but we've not really seen a massive improvement. Zhou Guan Yu saying that was in P11 in practice too. That was a good result for him. You would expect Valtteri Bottas in dry conditions to be quicker though. But maybe Alfa Romeo could be, a dark horse in that midfield along with Williams with these new parts they've got for their car. But most likely Alfa Romeo, the best I can see for them is getting probably one car into Q2, but then having one car eliminated in, 17th or 18th place. Still, fundamentally, they just don't have a very quick car. And of course, because they have such a low budget compared to other teams for development, they can't really keep up with teams like McLaren, Alpine, and, Williams have really gone past them on pace. So yeah, not looking great, Alfa Romeo, but maybe, after what Zhou did in practice too, maybe they could offer up a surprise for us. Haas F1, they look quite a bit better. Nico Hülkenberg once again in the top 10 in P7. And if there are any surprise entries into the top 10 on Saturday, then I do think Nico Hülkenberg has to be one of the contenders for that surprise. Probably Logan Sargent you'd have to put in there as well because of how good the Williams pace is. Maybe you could say an Alfa Romeo, but yeah, Hülkenberg, of course, with how great he's been in qualifying this season. He's made Q3 6 times out of 9 races. A truly remarkable record for a guy who I never really had down as a super quick qualifying driver like he's been this season. He's really annihilated Kevin Magnussen in qualifying, which is, again, something I did not expect whatsoever. Ultimately, though, I don't think they've got a good enough car to get into the top 10. I think they will probably be a tad quicker than Alpine. It will be very close between those two teams. They do seem to be very close to one another. But yeah, I just don't see them on the same level as Williams, Aston Martin, McLaren or Mercedes. So it will take something quite remarkable for Hülkenberg to get into the top 10 in qualifying. Remember, the last qualifying session Hülkenberg did at Silverstone was the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, and for Racing Point, he qualified in 3rd place. So he does have recent good form here, does Hülkenberg. So we'll watch out for him, of course, tomorrow with his great record in qualifying so far this season. Really impressing. AlphaTauri, yeah, their raft of new parts don't seem to have done very much. They seem to be the slowest team. Here is a picture of De Vries when I believe we had a tyre failure or a puncture on the front left, I think it was. De Vries ending up last of all the runners that actually did a lap time. And yeah, AlphaTauri in general just don't look quick whatsoever. Their car not quick enough at high speed. Their straight line speed is quite a bit down compared to the other midfield runners, not even just all the teams on the grid. And their car has nowhere near enough downforce to really be fighting in the top 10 like they were just a few weeks ago in Monaco and Spain. So yeah, AlphaTauri, most likely a double Q1 elimination for them. And let's finish up with the surprise of the day on their 800th Grand Prix, the Williams F1 team. And look at this livery. Oh my god, that is a beautiful car. And like I said, I really like how they've integrated the British flag to fit with the color scheme of the car. Looks really, really nice. And yeah, Williams 3rd and 5th in practice 2. I don't even know what to say. I mean, Alex Albon literally said after practice 2 that he has no idea why Williams are so quick. So, yeah, I can't really explain why Williams have improved. It's not because they've brought a massive upgrade here. Of course, they did bring a massive upgrade a couple of weeks ago in Canada, but I didn't think he was going to do this for them at this circuit. They are consistently quick in all of the sectors. And yeah, just look really great. And if they can get both cars into Q3, that would be such a beautiful thing to see on their 800th Grand Prix in Formula 1. Of course, this race at Silverstone was... this was the track where they got their first victory in 1979 with Clay Regazzoni. So long ago, of course, 1979. That's what, 44 years ago we're talking, and that was only like what 2 or 3 years I think after Williams were officially founded as a racing team. So yeah, it really, I'm hoping it will be a great home Grand Prix for the Williams team. They look really good. Obviously, because of the high-speed nature of the track, their very slippery car definitely is helping towards their great performance. But I do think, to a degree, that upgrade they had in Canada, which was basically a completely new car, definitely, to a degree, is helping their better performance here. But I think, again, for them to be this good is truly unexplainable. But if they keep this up for the rest of the weekend, which I really hope they do, in the dry, I do think, on low fuel, they're the 3rd best team. And that's why I'm going Alex Albon to qualify in P5. Logan Sargeant, because he's still lacking quite a few tenths of a second to his teammate, Alex Albon, 4.5 tenths it was the gap in practice 2, which I have to say, despite finishing P5 for Logan, he does need to bring that gap down. It should not be that big. He needs to be really a quarter of a second closer to Albon, and if he is, he probably can make it into Q3 tomorrow. But yeah, I think Logan will miss out and probably qualify, I don't know, 12th or 13th on the grid if Williams do carry through this type of pace. And yeah, I think they'll have a really great day tomorrow, and will turn out to have a great race day as well, because if they do start 5th on the grid of Albon, I mean, their race pace is not going to be quite as good as what we've seen with their low fuel running, but it's not going to be massively worse compared to what we've seen. So yeah, looking great for Williams. Great base to build off of. Let's all keep our fingers crossed that this is not just a freak day where the conditions and the track layout and the heat as you know, all come together to make for this Williams pace being so good. I really hope that's not the case, because it would be so great to see Williams have a car genuinely quick enough to be, you know, one of the top 5 best teams, because they've not been in a position like that since like 2017, which feels about 10 years ago, if not longer, to be honest, given how Formula 1 has moved on since then. Yeah, great for Williams. Really sexy car. Let's hope their car is as quick as it looks, and it definitely has been super, super quick. But there you go, guys. Those are all the teams. And let me just finish up the poll in the live chat. By the way, Brandon R says, appreciate the content, Chaz. I hope you're right on Ferrari pace. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I think I probably will be, because Ferrari do tend to carry through any good pace they have in practice to qualifying. So yeah, I think Ferrari will be looking good for tomorrow in dry or wet conditions, to be honest. So yeah, let me just finish up this poll in the chat. So I asked you guys, after Friday practice, who is most likely to challenge Red Bull for pole position? And the options were Ferrari, Aston Martin, and, well, 2 options for Mercedes, which I mistakenly did. 81 votes in total, and you guys voted for Ferrari with 62% of the vote, Aston Martin second, 20% of the vote, Mercedes third, 12% of the vote. Thank you guys very much for voting in that poll. And thank you for coming along to this qualifying preview. The first qualifying preview we've done, I think, since the Spanish Grand Prix. And I do like doing these the night before a qualifying session. And of course, I'll be doing it for the next few races, as it's... or not the next few races, actually, because we've got the sprint race at Spa. But we will be doing it a few more times in the next few races, is what I meant to say. But anyway, let me just quickly remind you guys again what the next two pieces of content on the channel are going to be. Tomorrow, I will be live from 11:15 AM UK time until 4:30 PM for the Practice 3 F2 Sprint Race and Qualifying Watch Along. Make sure to join me for that. What could be a really exciting day at Silverstone, a really surprising day. And then on Sunday, I'll be live at 1 PM UK time, 2 hours before the race starts for the race preview and race watch along, and then live all the way through, probably until 5:30 PM. And then, of course, on Monday, I'll be live at 8 PM UK time to go through all the talking points, really, from the last couple races, as we get, obviously, a lot closer to a summer break, as we're absolutely, no pun intended, motoring through the European season. Yeah, thank you guys for coming along. Don't forget to subscribe before you go, and make sure as well, before you go, to smash that like button. We're on 45 likes. Let's try and get up to 50 plus if we can by the time this stream ends. And as well, if you want to keep up the content on this channel, make sure to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5, or you can join my Discord server, link below in the description. Great place to keep up to date with when I go live, and channel announcements, stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to join that community over there on Discord, make sure to do so. But guys, until tomorrow morning, again at 11:15 AM, for qualifying day at the British Grand Prix, which could be a wet and wild day at Silverstone, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.